House?
Well, if that speech by Nomvula Mokonyane and Njabulani Zuza is anything to go by, it just tells you about the level of debate that was taking place inside that National Working Committee's meeting. We understand that it is an extended National Working Committee meeting, which of course would then include the secretaries and chairpersons of the leagues, and that's why Njabulani Zuza is part of that meeting. And he made it clear, saying that President Jacob Zuma remains the president today, he is the president tomorrow, and will remain the president of the country for the next 2 years, including the president of the ANC for the next couple of months. What this then points to, one gets to wonder whether within the National Working Committee, the extended National Working Committee, whether there was a push from the members of the National Working Committee that the president should step down. If you look at someone like Derek Hanekom, for instance, the former Minister of Tourism, he was one of those ministers who have been sacked. But if you look back at what happened last year already, in November, the last ANC-NEC meeting, where he was one of those who stood up within the NEC and called on a motion of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma. Of course, that was overturned. That didn't take place. One then wonders whether within this National Working Committee, whether he reiterated that call for President Jacob Zuma to step down. But that call would then come at a time where you have the likes of COSATU, an ANC alliance partner, the likes of the SACP, both saying that President Jacob Zuma should step down, but also the stalwarts. And you look into the press briefing that the stalwarts were giving earlier on today, and the veterans of the ANC were giving earlier on today, where they called on the president not only to resign as the president of the country, but also to resign as the president of the ANC. Chances of that happening, of course, as resigning as president of the ANC, are quite unlikely. But let's look in, for instance, what happens in a case where President Jacob Zuma resigns as president of the country. One of the questions would be, does this then point to political instability? Because if the president resigns, a new president then comes in, and that president also has the prerogative to appoint his own cabinet ministers, which then means that we might be in for another cabinet reshuffle. So in the case of political stability, do you then say President Jacob Zuma should continue his term in office for the next 2 years, or do you say President Jacob Zuma should go, get in a new president, and that president has his own cabinet? Or do you say the current cabinet that's there should remain with the incoming president? That's something that we'll have to wait and see. Of course, those were all the options that that one can merely guess that the National Working Committee members would be things that they'll be looking into as the country faces what Jackson Mthembu has previously called a crisis.
Can you give us a little bit of insight into the members of the National Working Committee? You mentioned those in opposition, Derek Hanekom, Tina Joma-Peterson. We don't know where she stands, but she's a minister without a job as of the cabinet reshuffle. But a lot of the other members are ministers, aren't they, who have kept their jobs. Does that lead us to any conclusions about the support for the president within the NWC?
Well, definitely. If you look at the National Working Committee members, there are about 20 National Working Committee members. This is excluding the top 6, which obviously forms part of the National Working Committee. If you include them, that's about 26 members. And now with the extended National Working Committee taking place now you have to add the chairpersons as well as the secretaries who are part of this meeting. And yes, the likes of Naledi Pandor, they are part of the National Working Committee. But let's look at Naledi Pandor, for instance. When the ANC was launching its discussion documents, and there was this whole debate around land reform and land expropriation without compensation, where President Jacob Zuma called on opposition parties within Parliament who he believed present the interest of the black majority, where he called on them and said that let's vote together to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. The likes of Naledi Pandor, who are part of the National Working Committee, at the launch of the discussion document said that the Constitution is not a stumbling block. Jackson Mthembu as well, the chief whip of the ANC in Parliament, he also said that the Section 25 of the Constitution is not a stumbling block. It's the failure of the party to implement its policies to ensure that there is land expropriation, to ensure rather that there's land redistribution or accelerated land redistribution. So one does get the sense that there would be some opposition opposition within the National Working Committee calling on the president to resign. Let's leave out the top 6. Let's look at President Jacob Zuma's speech earlier on at the Transnet Engineering Centre. He specifically mentioned that there are ministers within cabinet, there are ministers within government who are opposing the cabinet reshuffle. And then he spoke about we need to deal with this, or we will deal with this with the renewed vigor. What exactly that renewed vigor means is something quite interesting. It's something that one needs to zoom into. Does this then mean that the president would be threatening those who currently hold their post? Some have made the argument, for instance, if you look at the opposition parties that had a briefing yesterday, they've been making the argument that should Parliament have the National Assembly, should the National Assembly have the vote of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma, the motion that is, if the voting is not secret, it would not win, because they believe that there are those within the party of the ANC, cabinet ministers, as well as members, parliamentary members of parliament, who would like to secure their jobs and would not like to lose their jobs. And that's the reason that they will be voting in favor of President Jacob Zuma not stepping down as the president of the country. Then listen to the SACP, listen to COSATU. They say that yes, members of the ANC, the ministers as well as members of parliament should not be voting with the opposition, and rather those members of the ANC should put through their own motion of no confidence against the president.
All right, thank you very much, Aldrin. This is a political jigsaw that everybody is trying to solve. And he's speaking outside Luthuli House, where a meeting is underway of the National Working Committee. We know there are divisions among the ANC's top 6. So a lot of anticipation, a lot of people wanting to know what the sense is about President Jacob Zuma's political future among this broader body. It's not as broad as the National Executive Committee, but it is a broader working body of the ANC. And because of the opposition that we've seen from within and without the party, we saw earlier that the president's supporters coming out at a rally in Germiston in Gauteng, and we heard from Minister Nomvula Mokonyane, a spirited defense of President Jacob Zuma, of his track record, of the new finance minister as well, Malusi